Every thrift store in America is a library of forgotten secrets. It's where questionable hobbies, abandoned dreams, and just plain baffling decisions go to die, or to get a second chance for a few bucks. We've compiled 101 of the most unbelievable, hilarious, and sometimes genuinely creepy things people have ever pulled off those shelves. Forget dusty clothes and chipped mugs. We're talking about things that should have probably been buried, burned, or at the very least explained. 1. You're sifting through dusty picture frames and you find a photo album for $1. You flip it open, expecting pictures of family vacations. Instead, you find a meticulously crafted, multi-decade chronicle of the life of a single department store mannequin named Diane. There are pictures of her birthdays, her graduations, and even her wedding to another mannequin. Someone's commitment to this bit is both terrifying and deeply impressive. 2. It really does pay to check the pockets. A couple in North Carolina bought a 58-cent sweater from Goodwill. When one of them felt something in the pocket, they pulled out a small laminated piece of paper. It turned out to be a detailed playbook diagram from Vince Lombardi, the legendary Green Bay Packers coach. That 58-cent sweater, it sold at auction for over $43,000. 3. Imagine finding a beautiful antique wooden music box. You wind it up, but instead of a sweet melody, it plays a slightly off-key, unsettling tune you've never heard before. That's weird enough. But then you find a false bottom, and inside is a single lock of human hair tied with a ribbon and one perfectly preserved child's tooth. Now you own a haunted object. Congratulations. 4. Taxidermy in thrift stores is a given, but this was art. It wasn't two animals fighting. It was a single, large bullfrog dressed in a tiny tweed jacket and glasses, sitting serenely in a miniature rocking chair while reading a tiny leather-bound book. This wasn't a joke piece, the craftsmanship was incredible. Someone, somewhere, is missing their sophisticated amphibian scholar. 5. You know, sometimes you're just looking for a cool, heavy object to use as a paperweight. One shopper in Arizona thought he found the perfect thing. A weirdly shaped metal orb with a pin in it. He used it on his desk for months until a friend who was in the military came over, took one look, and told him he was using a live World War II-era grenade to hold down his mail. The bomb squad had to be called. 6. In a box of old electronics from the 90s, someone discovered a device that promised to translate your cat's meows into plain English. It came with a little microphone and a speaker that would, supposedly, voice your cat's deepest thoughts. Of course, the only phrases it ever said were things like, "I am hungry," and "leave me alone." Still, for $5, that's a bargain for that kind of profound insight. 7. Tucked away in a box of old kitchen utensils and silverware, a shopper found what looked like a set of fancy stainless steel ice picks. A little bit of research later revealed it wasn't for making cocktails. It was a complete vintage medical kit for performing lobotomies. Perfect for the aspiring mad scientist in your life, I guess. 8. You can find some truly bizarre personal histories. One person bought a dusty old shoebox, and inside were dozens and dozens of handwritten letters addressed to Santa Claus from the 1960s. The catch? They were all from adults. No one was asking for toys, they were asking for things like a husband who doesn't snore, winning lottery numbers, or the strength to not rob a bank. 9. Sometimes the ugliest things are worth the most. A man in Virginia paid $32 for a weird, swirly glass vase because he thought it looked interesting. He used it to hold pens for 2 years before an art expert saw it and nearly fainted. It was a lost piece by renowned Italian architect Carlo Scarpa, and it later sold for over $107,000. 10. This one is pure nightmare fuel. A shopper bought a cute, handcrafted wooden birdhouse. When they got it home, they peered inside the little circular entrance to see if it was clean. Staring right back at them was a single, incredibly realistic prosthetic glass eye just wedged into the back wall. Who put it there? And more importantly, why? 11. You're looking for a comfy armchair. Now, picture finding one upholstered entirely in dentures. Yes, hundreds of acrylic teeth and pink gums meticulously attached to every single inch of fabric. It's somehow both a masterpiece of outsider art and a one-way ticket to recurring nightmares. Someone spent months of their life on this. The only question is, why? 12. Everyone dreams of finding a designer item for pennies, but this is on another level. A woman bought an old ski suit for $2. When she got it home and washed it, she found a 1968 Olympic gold medal tucked away in an inside pocket, belonging to an Austrian skier. Of course, she returned it. But just imagine that moment of discovery. 13. What could be more boring than an old accounting ledger? Well, how about one that meticulously documents every single French fry the author ate over a 30-year period? Each entry had the date, the place, a crispiness score, and even notes on the dipping sauce. It wasn't just obsessive, it was a full-blown potato manifesto, and the dedication is almost frightening. 14. Sometimes you don't just find an object, you find a whole story. Case in point, a perfectly assembled, incredibly detailed ship in a bottle. But it wasn't some pirate galleon. It was the Titanic. At the exact moment of impact with the iceberg, complete with tiny detailed figures falling overboard. It's as impressive as it is deeply unsettling. 15. In a box of old kids' toys, someone found a vintage Little Chemist set. Sounds cute, right? Except this was a set from the 1950s, and you know what it included? Samples of actual radioactive uranium ore. Yes, they were encouraging kids to play with radioactive materials. Different times, different safety standards, I guess. 16. Ever wonder where old police evidence ends up? Apparently, the local thrift store. One guy bought an old film projector only to find a reel still inside. It turned out to be the raw, unedited interrogation footage of a notorious serial killer from the 1970s. Suddenly, movie night got a whole lot darker. 17. Okay, this one is just beautifully strange. A full-sized professional gorilla mascot costume, but with one tiny detail. It had a name tag sewn on the chest that read Derek, with the title Intern of the Month. We have so many questions. Who was Derek? Why was he the gorilla intern? And what did he do to earn that title? 18. Imagine buying a beat-up old suitcase for $5. You get it home, pry it open, and find it's filled with dozens of incredibly detailed, hand-drawn maps of entirely fictional cities. We're talking street names, parks, rivers, entire neighborhoods. It was someone's entire secret world just sitting there. 19. A woman in Texas bought an antique jewelry box. Inside, she discovered a false bottom. And tucked away in that secret compartment, a mummified human finger, still wearing a wedding ring. The police couldn't find a match, so now she owns a jewelry box. And a very disturbing mystery. 20. Some finds are just pure, joyful absurdity. Like a 3-foot-tall statue of a pigeon wearing a tiny, perfectly fitted cowboy hat and vest. It wasn't old or valuable. It was just flawlessly ridiculous. Someone consciously decided the world needed a cowboy pigeon, and honestly, we salute them. 21. This sounds like the beginning of a horror film. A shopper found an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. When he pressed play, he heard a quiet, monotonous voice repeating the same phrase over and over. "They can't see me, but I can see them." That's it. For an entire hour, you'd probably want to throw that thing back. 22. Someone found an oil painting of 4 poker players. A classic scene, right? Except all the players were clowns. And they weren't playing poker. They were locked in a deadly serious game of Monopoly. The look on the face of the clown who just landed on boardwalk with 2 hotels was priceless. 23. Buying a locked safe for $20 is always a gamble. But one guy hit the jackpot. When he finally got it open, it was stuffed with pristine, Golden Age Captain America comics from World War II. The collection he bought for the price of a pizza was later valued at over $10,000. 24. In a box of old kitchen gadgets was a strange-looking press. The included manual explained it was a home-use perfect egg cuber. You'd hard-boil an egg, place it inside, and the device would reform it into a perfect square. Because, well, just because you could. It's the answer to a question that absolutely no one was asking. 25. A truly unique piece of memorabilia. It was an old jam jar filled with water. On the handwritten label it said, "The Ghost of Patrick Swayze, captured on the set of Ghost. 100% authentic." The price was 99 cents. And you know what? Someone actually bought it. 26. Looking for a new hobby? How about bowling? Someone found a custom-made glittery bowling ball that looked perfectly normal until you picked it up. Embedded right where the thumb hole should be was a single very real human tooth. Was it for good luck? A warning to other bowlers? Either way, you're not getting a perfect game with that thing. 27. You find a painting of a sad-looking child. It's a little creepy, but you figure it's just art. You buy it, get it home, and notice some writing on the back of the frame. It's a note scrawled in faded ink that says, "Warning, he cries at night. Real tears." Would you actually hang that on your wall? 28. Forget Chucky. This is way weirder. Someone found a professional-grade ventriloquist dummy that was the spitting image of a local news anchor from the 1980s. We're talking uncanny resemblance, right down to the cheap suit and the perfect hair. Imagine the news anchor's surprise if he ever walked in and saw his miniature wooden doppelganger staring back at him. 29. The 1960s were a weird time for food, and one cookbook proves it. This wasn't about baking bread. It was a book dedicated entirely to recipes using gelatin, and not for dessert. We're talking culinary horrors like ham and banana hollandaise mold, and Jell-O tuna salad loaf. It's less of a cookbook and more of a historical document of questionable decisions. 30. In a box of old office supplies, a shopper pulled out a very official-looking binder. The title on the spine? Operation Squirrel Freedom. Inside were pages and pages of detailed hand-drawn schematics and plans for training an army of squirrels to steal walnuts from a specific neighbor's yard, identified only as the nemesis Mr. Henderson. 31. Nothing says nostalgia like an old VHS tape. Someone found one with a handwritten label that read, "Timmy's first birthday party." They popped it in, expecting cake and balloons. Instead, it was 2 solid hours of black and white static, until the very end when a child's laughter slowly warped into a blood-curdling scream. Suddenly, Timmy's party didn't feel so festive. 32. People will make a lamp out of anything, and we mean anything. Case in point, a fully functional table lamp where the entire base was an old, slightly scuffed-up prosthetic leg, complete with a sock and a worn-out sneaker. That's taking the concept of upcycling to a very, very strange place. 33. You're in the sporting goods section browsing through old golf clubs and tennis rackets when you stumble upon a full wearable suit of medieval chainmail armor. It was just hanging there, priced at $50. Perfect for your next trip to the Renaissance Fair, or, just fending off an unexpected siege at the grocery store. 34. We all want recognition for our skills. But maybe not like this. Someone found a large, very serious-looking trophy from 1987. The engraved plaque on the front didn't celebrate a sports victory. It proudly proclaimed the winner of the first annual Henderson County Best Parallel Parker Award. 35. Life-sized celebrity cutouts are one thing, but what about a life-sized, incredibly realistic wax figure of a completely random old man? He was wearing a cardigan, holding a pipe, and had a slightly confused expression. No plaque, no name, just a random grandpa waiting to be taken home. Talk about an instant family heirloom. 36. You see a framed, cross-stitched piece of art with the wholesome phrase, "Bless this mess." But below the gentle lettering isn't a picture of a cozy home. It's an incredibly detailed, chaotic, and fiery depiction of a massive train derailment. The sheer dedication to that punchline is a work of art in itself. 37. Finding an urn with ashes is one thing. Finding one with a sticky note is another. The note read, "This is Bob. He hated this urn. Please find him a better home. P.S. He liked classic rock and hated coconut." It's a find that's equal parts heartbreaking and hilarious. You don't just buy an urn, you adopt Bob. 38. We've all heard of hollowed-out books used to hide valuables. One thrift shopper found one, but instead of money or a flask, the hollowed-out space held a perfectly preserved peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was wrapped in wax paper, neatly labeled Lunch, 1975. Somehow it hadn't molded at all. Was it science or sorcery? 39. Tucked inside a vintage Tupperware container was a Ziploc bag containing a perfectly preserved slice of wedding cake from 1998, complete with a little frosting rose on top. Who keeps a piece of cake for over 2 decades and then just gives it away. For better or for worse, till thrift do us part. 40. A large glass jar, meticulously labeled belly button lint, 1978-1998. Inside was a massive, multicolored ball of fluff, the result of 20 years of dedicated harvesting. You have to respect that level of long-term commitment to something so utterly pointless. 41. You've seen the classic painting of dogs playing poker, right? Well, someone found the three-dimensional taxidermied squirrel version. 5 stuffed squirrels were seated around a tiny table, complete with little green visors, cigar stubs, and a pile of acorns in the middle. One was clearly hiding an ace up its sleeve. It's the kind of art that really ties a room together, if that room is in a forest cabin run by a madman. 42. Sometimes a thrift store t-shirt tells you more than you want to know. 1. A faded green from a 2003 Johnson family reunion had a stain right across the front and the phrase, "I survived the Great Potato Salad Incident," on the back. No details, no context, just the undeniable knowledge that chaos happened, and probably Aunt Carol was involved. 43. Buying old electronics is a gamble. One person bought a 90s-era answering machine, and the cassette tape was still inside. It contained a series of increasingly frantic messages for someone named Barnaby, all from the same woman, demanding to know what he had done about the emu situation. We never find out what happened with the emus, and frankly, it's probably for the best. 44. A shopper found a sweet, innocent-looking Victorian-style portrait of a young girl in a beautiful frame. A classic thrift store find, but it was a lenticular print. As you walked past it, her eyes didn't just follow you. Her sweet smile slowly morphed into a horrifying, toothy grin. It's not just a painting. It's a jump scare waiting to happen in your hallway. 45. In a pile of dusty frames, someone found a testament to a true champion. It was an officially framed certificate from a very obscure organization, awarding a man named Gerald the 1982 world record for loudest sneeze unassisted. It even listed the decibel level. Somewhere out there, a legend lives among us, and his greatest achievement ended up at a Goodwill. 46. Someone found what looked like a vintage Monopoly set. But when they opened it, all the classic properties were replaced with famous haunted locations. You could buy the Winchester Mystery House or build hotels on Amityville Avenue. The best part? The chance cards were replaced with curse cards, featuring instructions like, "A ghost has stolen your wallet. Lose all your money." 47. A beautiful vintage accordion. It looked great, but the person who bought it noticed it had a strange, lingering smell. Not the expected musty old attic smell. No, this accordion smelled faintly, but unmistakably, of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. Every single time you squeezed it, a little puff of cookie-scented air came out. No one could explain it. 48. Diaries are a common find, but this one was different. It was a diary written from the perspective of a cat named Mr. Bigglesworth. The entries, in perfect handwriting, detailed a life of intense napping, judging the mailman, and plotting the downfall of the household dog. Sample entry. Day 472. The red dot appeared again. I will defeat it this time. I will... 49. In the kitchenware aisle, someone found a set of beautifully crafted ceramic measuring cups. But they weren't for standard measurements. The labels were for things like a pinch of regret, half a cup of existential dread, a dash of hope, and 1 tablespoon of that thing you shouldn't have said. Finally, a measuring set for emotional baking. 50. Tucked inside an old dictionary was a box of pristine business cards. The name on the card was Mitch Finnegan, and his professional title was listed as Professional Alibi and Believable Excuse Provider. It even had a slogan, "Late for dinner, forgot an anniversary, call Mitch." You have to wonder how many people Mitch saved and how many times he used his own services. 51. A small velvet-lined box contained a collection of 6 antique glass prosthetic eyes. That's creepy enough. But the truly unsettling part? All 6 eyes, each a different color, were mounted in a way that they were all staring intently at the exact same point in the upper left corner of the box. What were they looking at? 52. It was just one shoe, sitting alone on a shelf. But it was a single, impossibly glamorous Christian Louboutin high heel, completely covered in Swarovski crystals. There was no sign of the other shoe anywhere. It was a modern Cinderella story, except this princess probably had a very wild night and a very confusing walk home. 53. Someone bought a large, heavy coffee table with a glass top. Nothing special, until they realized what was underneath the glass. It was a perfect, incredibly detailed miniature model of an entire suburban neighborhood, complete with tiny houses, cars, and even little people having a barbecue. Who builds that into a coffee table and then gives it away? 54. Standing ominously in the corner of one store was a full, life-size suit of knight's armor. On closer inspection, it wasn't made of metal. The entire thing, helmet, breastplate, gauntlets, was made from thousands and thousands of flattened, interconnected beer bottle caps. The sheer amount of time, effort, and beer that went into this is staggering. 55. You really have to admire the sheer, unapologetic audacity of some sellers. A shopper found a simple Ziploc bag stapled to a piece of cardboard. On the cardboard, a handwritten label proudly announced its contents: authentic air from a 1993 Grateful Dead concert. The asking price for this piece of rock and roll history? A cool $2. You're not just buying a bag of air, you're buying a story. 56. Ever find a self-help tape from the 80s? Well, this one wasn't for building confidence or quitting smoking. It was a cassette tape titled, "So Your Parrot Has a Potty Mouth, A Guide to Avian Etiquette." It contained an hour of calming nature sounds, interspersed with a man's gentle voice repeating phrases like, "Polly is a polite bird," and "Pretty bird doesn't use that word." 57. Everyone loves a good map, but this was on another level. It was a framed map of Wisconsin covered in dozens of tiny color-coded pins. A handwritten key explained the system. It was a guide to the state's best public restrooms, complete with ratings for cleanliness, privacy, and toilet paper quality. 5 stars for comfort. 0 for the guy waiting outside. 58. In a stack of dusty board games, someone unearthed a forgotten classic that never was. Corporate Ladder, the game of office survival. The game pieces were tiny briefcases, and the chance cards were replaced with HR memos that said things like, "Mandatory team building exercise, lose 1 turn," or "The coffee machine is broken, morale plummets." 59. You think you know creepy dolls? How about a porcelain doll that was holding a tiny locked locket? After painstakingly picking the lock, the new owner didn't find a picture inside. They found a single solitary grain of rice. And on that grain of rice, someone had drawn a microscopic, incredibly detailed, angry face. 60. Some art is just plain priceless, even when it's on a worthless canvas. A shopper bought a bizarre abstract painting for $10 purely because it was painted on the lid of a Domino's pizza box. It turns out it was an early, unknown work by a now famous local artist who was, at the time, too broke to afford canvas. That pizza box sold for over $1,000. 61. People collect all sorts of things, but this hobby was a little criminal. Someone donated a large box containing a collection of over 50 miniature traffic cones. Each one had a tiny handwritten tag tied to it, detailing the date and intersection from which its full-size counterpart was liberated. 62. You can find some wild old gadgets, but this one was a family wrecker. It was a home lie detector kit from the 1970s, complete with finger sensors and a wildly inaccurate needle. Taped to the box was a note. "This thing told my dad I stole his last beer. Ruined Thanksgiving. Do not use." 63. Not all trophies are for winning. A shopper found a large, glorious-looking trophy from a 1994 regional chili cook-off. But the engraved plaque didn't say Best Overall or Spiciest. It proudly awarded 3rd place for Most Indigestible. Someone was so bad at making chili they gave him an award for it. 64. The clothing section is a goldmine for strange stories. Case in point, a vintage denim jacket with a very official-looking embroidered patch on the back. The patch read, "The International Society of People Who Have Been Abducted by Aliens, official member." You have to wonder if it was a joke or if this was the uniform for the galaxy's most exclusive club. 65. Looking for a unique way to carry your drink? One person found a flask. But it wasn't a classic silver rectangle. It was shaped like a startlingly realistic, anatomically correct human heart. It's the perfect accessory for when you want to look cool, but also deeply concern everyone around you. 66. You expect to see weird statues, but this was a masterpiece of patriotic absurdity. It was a 3-foot-tall replica of the Statue of Liberty. But instead of holding a torch, Lady Liberty was proudly hoisting a giant, golden corn dog towards the sky. The American dream, deep-fried and served on a stick. 67. Sometimes the mystery is the whole point. A shopper found a single, ornate, antique key on a keyring. The attached tag didn't say what it opened. In shaky handwriting, it simply read, "If you're reading this, it's too late for me. Avenge me." Suddenly, a 50-cent purchase is the start of a very strange adventure. 68. Someone found a beautiful, complete set of fine china dinner plates. The pattern wasn't flowers or birds, though. Each plate was decorated with a gorgeous, scientifically accurate, and full-color illustration of a different human parasite. Nothing says bon appetit quite like staring at a tapeworm while you eat your spaghetti. 69. In the music section sat an instrument that looked like a bizarre fusion of a bagpipe and a clarinet. A note taped to it explained that it was a custom-made grief flute, specifically designed to be played at funerals for people you didn't actually like. The sound it produced was described as mildly annoying and vaguely disappointing. 70. Photo albums are windows into the past. This one was a window into a very bland obsession. It held hundreds of photos spanning 2 decades, each one documenting a beige-colored meal. Oatmeal, plain pasta, mashed potatoes, crackers. Page after page, nothing but beige. Honestly, it wasn't a diet. It was a 2-decade parade of bland. 71. You need a place to sit, but you also want to project an aura of mild lawlessness. The perfect solution? A surprisingly comfortable armchair constructed entirely from old stolen street signs. Yes, someone wove together dozens of stop, yield, and one-way signs to create a piece of furniture that is both a functional chair and a confession to multiple misdemeanors. 72. Forget the Mona Lisa. Imagine finding a massive oil-on-canvas portrait painted with the skill of an old master. It's a majestic, dramatic depiction of a famous celebrity. The celebrity, Nicolas Cage. The activity? He's sitting in his pajamas, thoughtfully eating a bowl of cereal. It is, without a doubt, the greatest piece of art ever created. 73. A classic, cheerful-looking Jack-in-the-Box. You turn the crank, it plays a sweet, tinkling version of Pop Goes the Weasel. You wait for the clown to pop out. But it's not a clown. The lid flies open, and a single, startlingly realistic, spring-loaded human finger pops out. Be honest, would you wind it up a second time? 74. What do you do with all those ugly neckties you get for Christmas over the years? Most people hide them in a drawer. One creative genius, however, stitched them all together to create a full, 3-piece business suit. It was a chaotic rainbow of polyester patterns and clashing colors. Perfect for a job interview you have absolutely no intention of getting. 75. Someone found an old leather-bound folder containing what appeared to be a last will and testament. It was a very formal, legally drafted document. The twist? The entire multi-million-dollar estate, the mansion, the vintage cars, the stock portfolio, was being left to a single entity, a ficus tree named Philip, with detailed instructions for its weekly watering schedule. 76. You can find plenty of old, ornate mirrors, but this one had a secret. No matter how much you cleaned it, there was always a single, faint, ghostly handprint visible on the glass. It wasn't on the surface. It seemed to be inside the mirror itself. And the spot where the handprint was? It was always inexplicably cold to the touch. 77. In a box of pet supplies sat a brand new in-the-box product from the 90s called cat goggles. They were tiny, stylish sunglasses for your feline friend, promising to protect their eyes from harmful glare. You have to admire the optimism of someone who thought they could convince a cat to wear sunglasses for even 1 second. 78. The box showed a picture of a brand new top-of-the-line blender. For $5, it was a steal. But when the buyer got it home and opened it, there was no blender. Inside, nestled in styrofoam, was a collection of about 20 pet rocks, each with a tiny name tag and a multi-page, handwritten backstory detailing its hopes and dreams. 79. You see a shiny, impressive trophy on a shelf. You pick it up to see what great achievement it commemorates. The engraved plaque doesn't say champion or first place. It simply reads, "For being the world's okayest brother, 1999. The sheer passive aggression is a trophy in itself. 80. It was just a simple hand-painted wooden sign, the kind you might hang in your kitchen. But the message on it raised so many questions. It didn't say live, laugh, love. It said, in very serious, neat lettering, "Do not alarm the cheese." What happens if you alarm the cheese? What constitutes alarming it? We may never know. 81. A vintage ceramic phrenology head. For those who don't know, this was a pseudoscience where people believed the bumps on your skull determined your personality. This head was mapped out with sections for traits like love of family, but also very specific, bizarre ones like propensity for witty banter and inability to resist a good bargain. 82. The record bin is always a strange place. This find was a vinyl record with a completely blank white cover. The title, printed in tiny letters, was "The Ambient Sounds of an Empty Room." And yes, that's exactly what it was. 30 minutes of absolute silence, room tone, and the occasional faint creak. It's either a profound artistic statement or the ultimate prank. 83. It was a beautiful, antique globe of the world. But the buyer noticed that the country of Madagascar felt a little loose. After some fiddling, it popped open, revealing a tiny secret compartment. Inside wasn't gold or jewels. It was a single, folded piece of paper with a typed message. "The penguins know. Trust no one." 84. Someone found a large binder, meticulously organized with plastic sleeves. It was a collection of hundreds of those red remove-before-flight tags you see on airplanes. This wasn't a pilot's collection. The accompanying notes suggested they were all found. How does one find hundreds of these things without being on some kind of watch list? 85. It looked like a standard board game, but the title was Traffic Jam, the game. The goal, according to the rules, was to be the last person to reach the finish line. The gameplay consisted of rolling a die and, most of the time, not moving at all. It was a brutally realistic and completely pointless game designed to cause maximum frustration. 86. Picture this. A perfectly crafted, historically accurate, miniature suit of chainmail and plate armor. The kind a knight would wear into glorious battle. The only catch? It was custom-made to fit a hamster. Someone, at some point, looked at their hamster and thought, "You know what Sir Reginald needs? To be battle-ready." 87. In the office supply section, a shopper found a lovely wooden suggestion box with a little slot on top, the kind of thing a good manager would put out. But on closer inspection, it wasn't a box at all. It was a solid block of wood. The slot was just painted on, and the back was sealed tight. Basically, it was every workplace suggestion you've ever made in physical form. 88. You've heard of emotional support animals, but what about an emotional support brick? That's what someone found. A standard red brick with large googly eyes glued to the front, nestled gently in a tiny hand-knitted felt blanket. A note attached said, "This is Bartholomew. He's a great listener." 89. Trophies are for winners, and this one was no exception. It was a large gold-plated trophy for the world's best procrastinator. The funny part, the nameplate proudly declared the winner from the year 1999, but the date the trophy was actually awarded, engraved at the bottom, was 2005. 90. Some inventions solve problems you didn't know you had, and some are just pure chaos. Case in point, a fully functional office stapler that was built into the body of a very realistic-looking plastic hot dog in a bun. Why would you want this? For what purpose? Who cares? It's incredible. 91. A beautiful, handcrafted German cuckoo clock. A classic find. Except when the hour struck, a tiny hand-carved wooden bird didn't pop out. A tiny hand-carved wooden skeleton on a swing popped out, letting out a haunting, echoing cuckoo before retreating back into the darkness. 92. It wasn't full of money or secrets. It was just a large glass jar, filled to the brim with hundreds of tiny, tightly rolled-up scrolls of paper. When the buyer unrolled a few, they found each one contained a single, beautifully written apology in perfect calligraphy for a minor transgression, like, "Sorry for eating the last cookie," or "Sorry for thinking a loud thought." 93. In a box of old toys was a magic wand that looked suspiciously like a stick with glitter glued to it. Taped to the wand was a price tag with a handwritten note on the back. Barely used, only a few small spells. Previous owner was a goblin. Works fine. 94. It was just a single, old-fashioned ice skate sitting by itself. But tied to the lace was a weathered tag with a single, ominous sentence written on it. It knows what it did. You don't know the story, but you suddenly don't trust that ice skate. 95. A shopper found a laminated, spiral-bound book that looked like an official manual. The title was Being a Human, a User's Guide for Beginners. The chapters included helpful tips like Chapter 3, How to Make Small Talk About the Weather, and Chapter 7, Pretending to be busy on your phone to avoid awkward interactions. 96. It was a small red box with a glass front, just like a fire alarm. The label on it read, "In case of mime emergency, break glass." Inside, behind the glass, was a tiny air horn and a laminated card that just said the word "Hey." 97. Someone bought an old can with a vintage label that read, "Genuine Canned Laughter." It didn't have a pull tab. You needed a can opener. A note taped to the side specified, "Warning, contains authentic, vintage laughter from a 1970s sitcom audience. May cause feelings of nostalgia and mild disappointment." 98. This wasn't just a collection of sock puppets. This was organized crime. Someone had created an entire sock puppet mafia family, complete with tiny pinstripe suits, fedoras, and names like Don Sacchioni and Frankie the Foot. They were all arranged in a box as if they were having a very serious meeting. 99. The pet section is always strange, but this was a conceptual masterpiece. It was a brand new, in-the-package, invisible dog leash. It was just a handle with nothing attached. The packaging promised a no-tangle, no-mess walk every time. And to be fair, they weren't wrong. 100. We've had squirrels in battle, but how about squirrels in politics? This was a full, taxidermied squirrel, standing upright behind a tiny wooden podium. It was wearing a little suit and tie, and in front of the podium was a tiny sign that read, "Vote for Nutsy. He's not afraid to get his paws dirty." 101. A simple, elegant, full-length mirror. It looked normal in every way, but a small typed note taped to the back provided the only description necessary. It read, "This mirror is in perfect condition. The previous owner said it only reflects what you truly are. No refunds." So there you have it. Proof that the weirdest corner of the internet is actually your local thrift store. From possessed dolls to political squirrels, the evidence is overwhelming. But let's be brutally honest. Some of these stories sound absolutely fake. It's time to call it out. I want you to go down to the comments and tell me which one story on this entire list you believe is a complete, undeniable lie. Don't be shy, find the most ridiculous one and expose it. Let's see which story gets debunked the most. While you're down there lighting up the comments, destroy the like button and subscribe so you're ready for the next deep dive into insanity.